You think to get a glass of water?
I'll go get you one now. You want another coffee as well?
No, just water.
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you.
You're good?
Hey everybody, Concepts with Calanta is about to start with my guest Pedro Lara. Hi everybody, Concepts with Calanta is about to start with my guest Pedro Lara. We just need a few minutes to finish all of the technical issues. Hope everyone's having a good Sunday. We'll be with you very shortly. All right. So we are streaming now, so everyone on Facebook can hear anything you say.
They can't see you though.
They can't see you though.
You can pick up a good do whatever you want to do. So a glass of water.
Thank you.
You want one as well, John?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much, Dan. All right, so we'll kick it off in a very short amount of time. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm ready.
I think you are too. Can you do another mic check for me?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Beautiful. No, you're fine. You don't move. You are perfect in frame. Perfect in frame. Oops. We are about to start in a few minutes, guys. You've got somebody who's a bit of a dinosaur working incredibly complex technology, so that's why it's always a little bit of a delay.
So just press transition when you're ready to go, dude.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks again to the good people at the Pod Hub, to Liam, who is a superstar, who's making everything possible. And tells me I'm too far from the mic. Okay, everybody, let's get started. Oh, am I in the thing? Am I in the...
All good.
Am I in the frame? Am I in the frame?
Good luck, boys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Today it is Sunday, May 19th. Today on Concepts with Calanta, we've got Pedro Lara, and the concept we're talking about is e-commerce and mindset. Welcome to the show, Pedro.
Thank you, John.
So by way of background, Pedro is an entrepreneur. He has started multiple e-commerce businesses. He is well known in the entrepreneur scene. He has worked extensively in the field of mindset, business development, and business growth. I know Pedro socially. I was very lucky to be introduced to him by a colleague I respect a great deal. And his views on business and his views on growing a business have been really fascinating to me. So today we're going to, I guess, talk a little bit about that concept. How do you get the idea to start a business? How do you sort of develop a business? Where do you go? What's the first step? So I'll start with a bit of a silly question. Why do you think your concept's an important one?
I just think that they're simple and we're all chasing growth and wanting to be better people in life, so why not? You know?
And I guess people think of, I think of business as being like this multifaceted thing. There's marketing and there's sales and there's e-commerce and there's this and there's that. Is there any particular reason that you chose one particular aspect to focus on? Or, I mean, I know it's all important, but why do you say that, say, mindset is the most important factor?
Doesn't matter what the business is. The business is a product, but without the leader leading that company, that product, the employees, everyone behind it in a particular direction, it's all going to fall apart. The glue is not strong, and if that leader isn't whole themselves, it tends to be like a bit of a murky journey. So I think for me personally, getting really clear and getting really whole and knowing what I wanted out of life made a big impact in the journey I wanted to live.
Well, let's talk a little bit about journeys. Nobody starts off as an e-commerce guru, and nobody starts off their journey knowing everything. Tell me a little bit about your story. How did you start? How did you get into business? What path did you travel?
It was really by accident. I was at uni at UNSW studying at home with my parents, and then out of the blue, my dad passed away, and he had a small business, and that's what paid our bills basically. My mum wasn't working at the time, so naturally I had to take over the business and keep paying the bills. And then with time, e-commerce, this is going back to 2005, and e-commerce, we didn't really have the money to go hard everywhere, and I was pretty tech focused, so e-commerce has allowed me to get a bigger market and be kind of doing what other people weren't doing, and it basically allowed me a competitive edge out of necessity really. And from there, obviously with time and growing market, early in the e-commerce world, things developed.
Awesome. Actually, guys, I've done a silly. I meant to share this on the Facebook page, so I'm just going to do that right now. Sorry, how rude am I as a host, eh? I'm just going to do a quick share. Cool. Great. Sorry. Thank you.
We're live.
Yeah, well, we were live for a while. But that's okay. That's what editing's for. Now, okay, so you basically were you were in university, you were studying, and then you had to sort of take on this role and sort of step up to the plate, so to speak. And you saw that e-commerce was a competitive advantage. Can you give me a year, like a time frame? When was this?
This was 2005.
Okay.
And for the first few years, I was really just trying to earn enough to pay myself through uni and to support my mum at the time.
Okay, that's awesome. And with the technology at the time, what was it like?
It was very, very, very simple. So if you can remember back then, it was literally HTML1. We were already e-commerce and taking payments online, which was very early. But this is before a lot of off-the-shelf technology was available where you'd have to kind of build everything. The good thing was there wasn't many people doing it. So if you could build it, you could pretty much run it. It wasn't as competitive as it is now.
So the technology's evolved. The business has obviously grown, and you've done very well, as you deserve to, from working that hard. Tell me this: has your mindset changed?
Massively. There was kind of a point in life when I was 27 where I had an accident, and up till 27 the run had been a pretty epic run. I've been lucky. I had a lot of hardship early on in the business, like down to the line of not having any money. I sold my car for half its value because I was behind on debt. My mum had to when her car broke down, had to get a bus to the warehouse for a while. We were really, really, really playing it fine on having money. But then as things turned around, business grew, we bought some properties, and the property market in Sydney obviously went really well. Suddenly life changed a lot, and to be young and have such a change, I had a lot of fun along the way. Probably did a lot of stupid things. But when I was 27, I had an accident, and it put everything in perspective. I had a lot of time at home to reflect on my journey, realize that I wasn't as popular or as cool as I thought I was. And that's when I really started reading and looking to myself, and just it was day and night shift. And from then on, it's been a very different journey.
I think that's a journey that a lot of young people go on. They realize, oh my God, the things that I thought were so important really aren't.
Yeah.
And I've never been cool, so it's a little bit easier
I
for
don't
me.
think I am yet either. But at the time, I was putting all my value on external things, and basically buying my friendships and my status, and it all came crashing down.
Ah, well, the concept of Calanta is not about just the climb. There's going to be some crashes. That's life, isn't it? So, tell me this. Paint me a picture, if you can, of how. Let's take an issue like you've had a good quarter.
Yeah.
Paint me a picture of how 26-year-old Pedro would look at that versus how today's Pedro does.
At the time, at 25, 26, was probably the peak of me going a little bit crazy. I hadn't disassociated myself from the business yet, so my value was in the success of the business. And obviously, the turnover of the business and the reality of the bottom line aren't the same. But when you're seeing so much money coming through the business bank accounts, when you're going out and spending, nothing feels significant, because if you just send your bank account move $80,000 to $100,000 that day, and you go out and you spend whatever you spend, nothing feels significant. Only problem with that whole mindset was just because the business bank account was moving so in big numbers, that wasn't profit. Took me a while to realize that. Now I'm very simple. Like, you know me, so
yeah.
I don't wear designer clothes. I'm not really collecting the watches and the cars and the toys like I used to. Now everything's about the coffee by the beach in the morning. Really the simple things. But at 25, 26, it's a whole different story.
I think I should probably paint a bit of a picture of Pedro. Now, I mean, he is one of the most down-to-earth, humble, pleasant people that I know. You meet him, you'd never know what a success story is. But, you do your research behind him. This guy is the man when it comes to e-commerce. He's been approached by some of the big players to go out there and help them kind of update and upgrade their technology. And all at are you 33 or 34?
34.
34, at the tender age of 34. So, I think the interesting thing is, for me, I've never had a business where, big numbers come in and big numbers go out. So, for us, I give you an example. As a lawyer, especially a litigator, it might be that we work on a case for a year and then we get a big payout at the end of that year. And, but believe you me, every single day when we're not getting that payout, we are just sitting there going, oh, and then, you accrue these debts and you've got these cash flows coming in and out. And I think for a lot of people who are employees or work for somewhere else, they never see these big, we all like to think that, money won't change us. We all like to think that, if we win the lottery, we'll basically be the same person. But I think that there's enough research, at least empirically, to show that it does change you, and usually not in a good way. And I think that a lot of the listeners who listen to the show are really interested in, well, I'm going to be a success story one day, and we need to talk about how that's going to shift your mindset.
Big numbers does change you, but if you're a whole and happy person before the money comes, you tend to be the same after. So money, even like drugs and alcohol, they tend to be magnifying glasses to whoever you really are. So I don't think there's anything wrong with money or big numbers. The only thing is that I've learned over the years now, reflecting backwards, is grain by grain, the chicken gets fat. So it's nicer to just have small numbers that come in and compound over time. You don't realize that, like, a lot of people look at all these unicorn companies and overnight successes, and although they're beautiful, they're not normality. And if you can kind of just get small wealth that builds on, and not only wealth in terms of money, but in terms of knowledge and mindset, so small compounding moments, eventually you hit J curve and you get a lot of growth. And I think it's a healthier growth because it's not one to the next straight away.
Well, one of our watchers has just asked, what's most important to you now, Pedro?
Most important to me now really is living based on love. I love going to the cafe every morning. I get up quite early, spend an hour and a half talking to randoms, for me, it's my community. It's also the simple thing, the water, or whether it's the cafe by the beach or on the harbour, just grounds me. That's it for me. Everything after that is a bonus.
So, what's your morning ritual? I know that a lot of highly successful people have a pretty stylized, good quality morning ritual.
Mine's a little bit different. So I don't meditate. I don't do yoga. I don't do a lot of, I guess, what the other people in the entrepreneurial world are doing. I get up. I'm not a very morning person per se, so I like being by myself. I get up, I wander around the house, a little bit lost. Then I go down to the cafe normally by 6:30 in the morning, have a coffee. I always go to one of the same two cafes, and they both have communal tables. So I don't like sitting by myself. I like sitting there and talking to whoever will kind of chit chat back. Have a coffee, read the paper. I'm normally there for about an hour, hour and a half. From there, it's normally about 7:30. Get into the warehouse, and I like doing some work before anyone's there when it's nice and quiet. This allows me to focus.
Awesome. That's awesome. And with regards to the lessons you've learned,
Yeah.
let's do a shift now.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's assume that we've got a listener who wants to make it. They're hungry to make it. Are you saying, in your experience, that these things are not interchangeable? So for example, you're successful because you've mastered these lessons, and these lessons that you're going to give us in the next bit are just as valuable to someone who has $1 than someone who has $100 million.
Yeah, I think anyone can be successful. The definition of success is quite important. So success doesn't always have to come from $1 or $100 million. I think you can be successful just by being happy and being central to your community. But the lessons I've learned over time have really come down to simple things: visualization, the power of compounding, whether that be mindset, knowledge, or wealth.
Mate, I'm gonna drill down on all of these. So just
I'm
give
a
me.
bit obsessed with compounding, by the way.
Well, we're gonna talk the heck out of compounding.
And one probably major thing for me, and it happened at 27, was disconnecting. So when I mean disconnecting, it was for me personally, and this is probably a little bit controversial, but for me personally, I disconnected from the media.
Yep.
Because I believe that they sell fear to make money, and I wanted to be in a state of love. I disconnected from social because I felt like I was negatively comparing my realities to the highlights of others, and it was putting a lot of pressure on me, and I guess on those around me, to live up to these highlights, which weren't necessarily real. And I just found myself not being who I wanted to be, and being quite negative about it. And then back to visualization and compounding. But once I disconnected, and I kind of I disconnected because I had to. I spent 6 months at home in bed, pretty much. But and it was hard to sit there in bed and watch other people rock live. But when I did disconnect and started reading and slow down, that's when I kind of started finding myself. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but
It does, but that's okay. Journeys are cheesy.
yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about, I think you said there's 3 big things. One is visualization.
Yeah.
One is the power of compounding.
Yeah.
And the third is disassociation.
Yeah.
Now, you've talked a little bit about disassociation, so I think we'll come back to that in a bit. But let's talk about visualization. What does visualization mean to you?
Visualization is just basically painting a picture in your own mind of whatever you want to achieve, because whatever we focus on, we tend to achieve. So I didn't realize I did it early on, but when I was studying for my school certificate, I was studying with the desktop of a particular car, being aware, like cars. And then when I was on a trip up to Queensland as an early 20s, I pulled into a marina and I got a selfie in front of a boat that I totally forgot I even took, because the boat had my name on it. It was called Pedro's.
Well, isn't that the universe giving you a signal?
And then I went to school in the eastern suburbs, and I'd walk down to the beach and I'd walk past a particular building that I've always liked. Mainly most buildings are symmetrical, and this building was very different. It looked like a big house. But I never really thought about any of these three things, they all came to me in life. When I had to sell my car because I was really low on money, my mum was like going, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Because I bought that car with my dad and built it up a bit. My dad had obviously passed, so my mum was like, "You can't sell the car, you got to sell something else." I was like, "No, I'm selling the car, and the next one will be awesome." And within a year, I had that car that was on my screensaver. I had a customer come into the shop, and he was moving overseas and asked me if I wanted to buy a boat. And I was like, "Well, no, not really." But gave me a really good price, and I bought a boat without knowing what boat I was going to buy. I turned up to the marina to go pick up the boat I bought, and it was at Birkenhead Point. And I got the boat. I was like pretty impressed with it. It was a lot better than what I thought I was getting. It was just an off chance. I can't believe I bought this boat. But then when my mum bought me a new digital camera, and I was looking for a memory card. I found one in an old camera. Going through the photos, and there was a selfie with me in the exact same boat. It was a different boat, the exact same model, same price scheme from years earlier. You know, and the apartment I used to walk past, it came up for sale when I was 25 years old, and I bought it. Like, it was a scary number at the time. Now, by Sydney prices, wasn't a bad buy, but and they were all things that looking back. So now I actively try and visualize moving forward.
You know, it's so funny you mentioned that. I've got a story about visualization because I'm a pretty big skeptic on anything that doesn't have like empirical proof. But one thing that I found that I do is whenever I go to court, for example, you know, I'll give my submissions, or I'll speak to the judge, and what I always do is it's really I will write out what I think the outcome will be before it comes out.
Yeah.
And I thought for a while, you know, this was me. You know, I know my work. I know what I'm doing. I know how well I went just then. I'm going to be getting the answer. And I found after doing this for a few years, it's a scarily accurate estimate. And one of the people I talked to says it's really funny. What you're actually doing is visualizing. You're not guessing what the outcome will be. You are creating the outcome in your mind, and you're creating it in reality. And that really kind of resonated with me because, you know, it's funny when I talk about executive legal. You know, I often complain about how hard I have to work and how, you know, how stressful it is. And I was looking back through the cameras, and through the early days a few years ago. There's a photo of me with the microwave. We were so happy to get a microwave because we didn't have a microwave before. And now, you know, we've got this big office. We've got like, you know, this gorgeous like view of the park. And, you know, it's funny because you think back and you don't sort of see the journey, and it's those moments, right? Like finding that camera.
It's actually different things popped into my head, but one thing I've always kind of, I guess, disliked, especially about the story now, you know, for me, it wasn't entrepreneurial, was I needed to make money. So I've never really thought myself as an entrepreneur. This is a new word that gets thrown around now, and I actually don't like being called an entrepreneur. But what scares me is everyone loves this hustle mentality and this badge of honor of how many hours they worked and how difficult they had it, etc. I had a very greeny kind of hippie guy work with me at one stage, and this is just after my accident. So, and he really was just so simple. He'd go hug the tree kind of guy. He still is. But he really brought the concept to me of life being a working holiday and a journey. And I think once I started thinking of my life as a journey and working holiday, and not this struggle where, you know, like making money or growing the business has to be hard. I started not looking at it as a money perspective, but I wanted to build a beautiful company that could stand from the outside and watch it, which was from reading a book called E-Myth by Michael Gerber. But standing outside and watching it, it didn't become a hustle, and I really hate that word because the journey should be beautiful. If it's a hustle, you're doing something wrong. It shouldn't be hard, right? And that's what you're talking about, executive legal, being hard. It shouldn't be hard. It should be just magical. You're creating moments for people at their most pinnacle time in life where basically you're controlling the outcome of their journey. So it's magical, you know. From there, everything else will flow.
Well, let's talk about the second sort of concept that you sorry, it's only one concept, just in case anyone wants to call me out on social media. The concept being mindset in business, but the second factor being the compounding effect. Albert Einstein called compounding the most powerful force in the universe. What do you say? Do you agree with him?
Definitely. Like, I used to think there were some old friends of my dad, older guys, and they used to say, Pedro, money's made in compounding, money's made in compounding. And it used to annoy me because I did not understand what they meant. And to me, they were just old people at the time. Now I've really seen the value of compounding. So what happened by accident, like as the business grew, you get more employees, you have to put in more structures, and that you're compounding on the foundation of that business. As I bought properties out of necessity because the business grew, I had to buy more warehouses, I wanted to live somewhere nice, I wanted my mum to have somewhere nicer to live, and etc. etc. I never thought about it, but these properties have gone up in value and have compounded. My mindset, like the more books I've read, the more I've learned, my knowledge has compounded. The problem is it compounds so slowly you don't notice it, but when you reflect back on 10, 15 years, people that meet me now and haven't seen my journey and how hard I've had to work to get here, it's very easy now to make an assessment, because I live in the eastern suburbs. I didn't grow up in the eastern suburbs, but because of this or because of that.
They think that because of the man bun, buddy. That's
Man
that's why they think you're from the east.
The giveaway, but like it's all happened, but it's taken 10, 15 years. Nothing happened overnight. But what I realize now over time is that I was constantly adding to it without knowing. A lot of it by necessity, by luck, by whatever you want to call it. And the compounding effect really does make a difference because one thing goes on top of the other and you hit J curve, but not only in terms of wealth, but in terms of mindset. And there's a big talk now, especially with technology space, about linear mindset versus exponential mindset. And, it's, now that I look back at it, it's obvious.
What's a J curve? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
Okay. It's just a business term when something's growing, with compounding, it's just like 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 16.
Yeah.
And it grows so quickly that if you look at it from a graph perspective, out of nowhere, it grows. So a lot of times in technology, when you look, something might have come out 10 years ago, it kind of flies under the radar for so long, and then out of nowhere, it just skyrockets, and people go, it just arrived. So cryptocurrency, now 10 years old, it's creeping to become, forget about the values and the highs and lows, but as a technology platform, it's creeping that in the next 5 years, there's going to be a window of 6 to 12 months where suddenly it's mainstream, and people won't have realized, but it's been brewing there for 10, 15 years. Might just need the legislation, like in the accounting practices that say that, blockchain to keep data is accepted. And then out of nowhere, all accounting software will have blockchain in. And then that's when it hits a J curve.
Okay, that's awesome. So we've talked about mindset, we've talked about visualization, disconnection. In a way, what you're saying is you want to disconnect from the fake and connect with the real. Is that? Am I paraphrasing correctly?
Sometimes it's hard to know what's real and what's fake. So for me, it was more just full-on disconnection. Like my social media is dead. Like I don't post on Facebook or Instagram. I literally have 300 followers on Instagram, and I try not to, but it's hard. Scroll through and look, because subliminally we're kind of accepting that we want this, and that's when there's a disconnect. So I got rid of my TV. My TV is actually sitting in the boardroom at work, so it's on the floor. I got rid of my TV, and my TV units are full of books. So I don't have a TV. I do still have a TV in my room, but I've got no TV antenna, so I look at content by choice.
Yep.
And on social media, on my phone, I've got screen time, and I'm aware of how much time I spend on it, and I proactively try not to spend too much time on it. So for me, disconnecting was literally disconnecting.
On this journey that you've gone through, let's say there's another young person, who wants to take this journey, who wants to create a business, who wants to do what you've done.
Yeah.
What's the lesson? Without these higher order lessons, what's a practical lesson that you'd give them?
Literally disconnect off Instagram and social. Instagram is amazing, by the way, and Facebook. I made quite a lot of money from promoting products, and obviously I'm in the e-commerce space, so I need to get mass. Like it's really a numbers game in terms of how many orders and scaling your order, average order values, etc. But from a personal life, I think the one thing that really worked for me, and it doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else, but the one thing that really worked for me was disconnecting, because it allows you realize how many hours you actually have in a day and gives you time to focus.
And when you talk about e-commerce being a numbers game, and it's about doing this, hitting this and hitting that metric, and do you use a lot of metrics and keep a lot of information? Are you big on data?
That's the beauty of e-commerce. Like for me, I'm huge on data. I'm a massive geek, so every metric I know for my business, whether how much of each payment process and method orders are coming through, because obviously there's different costs to each one. How many orders are coming through, what sources are coming through, what the average value per source might be, how many items are on an order. So an order coming in from Google Shopping might only have a very low average order value, and also average items per order. The more items you have in an order, the easier it is to profit, because then you're distributing the cost of shipping. So everything is a numbers game. How many emails are coming in, how quickly the emails are getting answered, how many calls are coming in. So there's a metric on everything, and I've got a dashboard and everything, and also the happiness of the customer. So the happiness out of the shipping, or the email replies, or etc.
How do you marry that up with this? It's so fascinating to hear you say that, because if somebody had only heard some parts of the interview, they think, well, he doesn't seem particularly focused on those things. He seems more to be connected with. How do you marry up this? And I know you heard the word hustle.
Yeah.
I know you hate the word hustle, but how do you marry up this need to run a business effectively and efficiently with this desire to live a simple, pleasant life? How do you, I guess, develop that work-life balance?
I made a conscious effort to. So I work. I don't have to. Obviously, being tech, I can work from my laptop anyway. But I made a conscious effort that I go into the warehouse. The warehouse is where I got my office, by the way. I go into the warehouse every day and work 8:30 to 5. And I made the effort that if I couldn't have my work done by 5, unless there's sometimes you just have to do it. Right? But if I couldn't, there's nothing that can't be done tomorrow. Life's beautiful, life's a journey, nothing's that important. And so it just made me a whole lot more efficient. I'm a massive geek at heart, so even though I might only work on the business those hours, I'm constantly working in terms of when I'm at home, I'm reading books, I'm learning. All these learnings you can then take into the business, whether it's constantly or not. I'm always out with friends. Like, man, what I've learned from you, Jahan, has been incredible. Like the times we've had out, you're always picking something up in those learnings. So that's when I don't think the concept of what that guy that worked with me said, that life's a working holiday, it really is. But then I'm a mega geek at heart, so I like learning and I like numbers.
I really like that idea of if it's not done by 5, it can wait, because we live in a 24-hour world.
There is times like if we're having Black Friday or Cyber Monday or something, man, you got to work. But the day after a public holiday, for example, because if the public holiday is on a Monday and we've gone back on a Tuesday, we effectively got 4 days worth of anything from the close of business on a Friday to the Tuesday. Especially if you tie that in with a Cyber Monday or something. I mean, there's times where you're going to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning. But it doesn't have to be a constant.
What are you reading at the moment?
I actually am not reading a book at the moment. I've been traveling quite a lot. I've been traveling more than I've been here. So reading has taken a back step. The last book I read was The 5 a.m. Club, and I absolutely adored it.
I remember you telling me about this, and I remember that Pedro's given me some really good book recommendations. One that I'm currently reading is called Traction, and there's another one called Rocket Fuel that he just introduced me to today. How important do you think is growth in this modern economy, in this modern world? How important do you think is self-growth? How important do you think it is having that realization that, I'll give you my example. I used to think that all you had to do in life was if you went through school and then you went through university and you got the degree and you got the job, you would just be set. And that was such an idiotic, incorrect viewpoint of the world. That's just to train you up so that when you enter the real world, you've got some skills, and it never stops. And the people that I think are the most successful, including I work with some really senior barristers who are, former judges, and one I'm thinking in particular, he's in his 80s, still calls me up on a Sunday. Jahan, have you read this latest case? He's still excited. He's still growing. He's still passionate. How important do you think that is for a young person who's, or even an older person who's just trying to understand how they can reach that next plateau?
I think Peter Pan had it right, where to be youthful at heart and the kid mindset. So in the early days when my dad passed away and I was running the business, I was 19, 20. I would take my P plates off the car so I wouldn't look too young, but I mean, I'm 34 and I've got a baby face. When I was 19, 20, I looked like a toddler. But I tried to be older to have value and have credibility, to an extent, fake it till you make it. As I've gotten older now, I feel like to be youthful at heart is so important, because kids are beautiful and they have a beautiful innocence to them, and they also, if they have to cross the road, they don't go, oh, we have to walk up there, hit the button, cross, wait for it, might get a ticket for jaywalk or whatever, and then call Jahan, get us out. They go, shit, we'll cross the road, stop the cars, roll over, jump over a car. They find a creative process to doing it. And that's one thing that the schooling system sometimes we lose, is the creative process. And I'm not an advocate of anti-schooling or anti-university. I went to university. I think education is magical, it's beautiful. It's a differentiating factor for us in life. I don't think you 100% need education. I think you can be whole and beautiful without education. You can be whole and beautiful with. I'm not pro or against uni, but I am massive into learning, whether that be self-education, education from, like, over the years, the amount of conferences I've gone to, the amount of books I've read, yes, I went to uni. You can never stop learning. The moment you think you've learned it all, I guess, is when you've really kidded yourself.
That's right. I think it's called the student mentality. You have to continuously know that there's someone out there who knows it better than you. Yeah,
and he's that excited. Like, I walk into a room, I go, ooh, light bulb, ooh, that's pretty, ooh, sunset, ooh. Doesn't matter how many times, I still come back to my apartment and go, ooh, you, or, like, whatever it might be. I get on a plane and I'm like, ooh, electric window shutters, just play up and down, look like the biggest child. And they always ask me, is this the first time? I'm like, no.
Well, it's true. I mean, I remember the first time that I saw Wi-Fi on a plane, and I was just like, I'm flying in the sky, and I can access the internet. It's insane. It's just, it is a magical journey, isn't it? And I think that that's something that people forget. You have a broad network of people who are very successful. Some people are unsuccessful. And I know that you affiliate with a lot of other entrepreneurs and sort of in that space. Have you found that this mindset of sort of young at heart tends to be in the higher echelons as well?
I think everyone's got their own different journeys, different needs, different wants. There's a lot of successful people that are unfulfilled. They might be successful from the outside, the watch, the car, the house, the beautiful partner, the kids, whatever it might be. But deep down, when you get to know them well, they're not necessarily happy. The same rings true on the opposite. There's so many people that fly under the radar and they're just really fulfilled, really wanting to give back, wanting to create companies that have impact, that give back to the world, that create positive change in the world, wanting to be pillars of their community. There's no right or wrong. There's definitely some that kind of really excited and children at heart, and I think there's no wrong.
And when it comes to the journey that other people go on, or that you want to encourage people, what would you say to somebody who's at a crossroads in their life? Okay, so young or old, and they go, you know what, I'm going to start to live my life in this way. I'm going to move towards living my life in a more disconnected, visualized, understanding the compounding effect type life. What would you say would be your first step?
do it slowly. If you try to change overnight, it's like me going to the gym. It happens for a week and then it drops out, right? I think if you just know the direction you want to go and do it slowly. I'm still on the learning curve. Like, I haven't nailed life. I'm not living perfectly. I'm just being conscious of the journey I want to go on, and more, you talked about my circle of friends, like they've also come through me actively wanting to surround myself with people that I admire and aspire to be and love. When I was younger, I was looking for people that validated me rather than I was inspired to be around. That was an active like thing that I pursued. But there's no right or wrong, and by no means do I feel like my journey is perfect. But if I do stop and reflect back on the 15-year run I had, those three things of disconnecting, compounding, and visualization are probably the three key things that really, if I look at my life pre-27 when I had my accident and post-27, the two lives that I lived, like I really did live a showy life before. And just to paint a picture without sounding like, I guess, cocky, but I'd gone from no money at 19 to living a life that was like coming to America. I moved here at 22 where I had my own warehouse, bought my own house. I was driving my dream sports car, had a jet ski, the motorbike. The house had the air hockey tables, big ass sound system, and everything was over the top. I was also heavily in debt. So all that was bought in finance that I couldn't afford. I'd gone to T2 lenders because I had no fee at the time. There was nothing to lose because I had nothing, right? Yeah. When moving forward, and I was just super lucky that the business worked out and the property market in Sydney moved, because I could have easily been super bankrupt, declared bankrupt working somewhere, right? So it wasn't that I did anything well. There was a lot of luck in that. And then moving forward now, the life I live now, I still can't believe it. Like, I'm a little child. Every time I do something, or fly somewhere, stay somewhere, I'm like, oh my God, is this really happening? But the novelty never wears off, and I feel like even if I was to lose everything tomorrow, I'm now pretty grounded that I can just go to the cafe and have my $3.80 coffee and I'm happy. Obviously, I don't lose everything. But I think it's just, so if you're all starting again, I would just kind of do it the same. I would do it in e-commerce though. I think, yeah.
You would do e-commerce?
I would, like any business that you can kind of, I mean, it's bad for me because obviously my competitors also have this advantage now, but low barrier to entry, you can work to an extent from anywhere. It really does come down to learning and studying hard, because the technology is available to start for no cost, pretty much. You get to a certain point, the cost actually gets quite expensive, but normally you're making money by that stage too, and it's just scalable. But this is a kind of a different topic, but like for me, it's always for financial wealth that you need your cash cow, your cash flow, and hopefully that's disassociated from time, because otherwise time's not scalable. So from that cash flow, I feel like you need your net assets, whether that's other companies you invest in, properties, or something that has both growth and return, and then you need your Hail Marys that might be startups that you invest in, or crypto, or whatever. And I've done those three, and over time, back to the compounding effect, a lot of those all start bringing in money, and then with obviously more cash flow coming in, you can invest in more things, and that's when you hit like the J curve and the compounding effect.
Well, I don't know if you saw Jack Henderson's podcast on here, but he gave very similar advice in that respect, where he said, whatever asset class you invest in, you've got to make sure that you understand that asset class. So for him, it's property, because I understand property, but you can make money in anything. You just have to understand that thing.
Yeah, for me, it's my business, property as a solid asset, and investing in tech startups. Once again, it's two things that I kind of relatively understand, which is technology and property. I don't touch the stock market. I don't touch a lot of things because if I dedicated time, I could learn it, but they're not my passion.
Well, Pedro, what if I told you in a few weeks a very good stock trader and equity broker would be coming on my show, and you could educate yourself in a nifty 1 hour.
45 minutes.
We've talked a lot about success. We've talked a lot about mindset. How do you deal with a setback?
Oh man, there's been a few. Not well, really. At the time, it always feels like the world's collapsing. Like I can't remember exactly how old I was, probably about 25. I'd opened up another company with a partnership, and that company skyrocketed in 1 year, and also collapsed the year after. On the way up, I didn't really even enjoy it.
Yeah.
And on the way down, man, that hurt, both ego and financially, etc. I think there's been like failure after failure along. One thing I did learn, and it's not my saying or my concept, but you're either learning or you're growing. I heard that from Vern Harnish, which is wrote the book Scaling Up. But I think now I respect that. At the time, I was pretty much in tears.
And now and moving, so with the skills you have at 33, and I'm sure that at 35 you'll have a different answer, at 37 you'll have a different answer, because as you said, you're always growing and compounding. What do you want to achieve? What's your goal?
Well, first and foremost, I want to live based on love, and I know that kind of is very vague and cheesy, but there's only love
Not
or
at
fear,
all.
and I want to live based on love. So that's first and foremost. Little pipe dream is at some point in my life I want to sail the Mediterranean on a little 40-foot sailboat with a life partner from port to port, have olives with the old men of the little villages and stuff, not going through your known party villages,
Yeah.
but more those little villages that are off the map. And from a global perspective, really want to create an impact-led company that impacts the lives of 100 million people, while obviously as a profit, but really something that has a positive impact on the world. And I think the future will all be helping others, which we, in a sense, help ourselves. But so I think that will be, hopefully, by the time 35, 36, I'll be doing something that has a real positive impact on the world.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro Lara. This has been the Concepts with Kalanta for the 19th of May, talking with Mr. Pedro Lara about the concept of mindset in business. Everybody have a great week, and I will reach out to you next week. Thanks.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Bye.